I love my mummy. She grew me from her insides, encased by the flesh that we share. She nourished me with the liquid pulsing through her rotten body. Together we play games. Mummy shows me how to make dolls from the scraps of Daddy's meat. Pretty girl dolls with long floppy limbs that reek of decay. I don't like Mummy after the sun goes down. She tells me we can't make dolls anymore. Tells me my dolls are stupid. At night I hide. I have to find a different hiding spot tonight. Mummy found my last one at sunrise. I can see the claw marks from when she found me in the linen cupboard. Long nails attached to long fingers, penetrating the cheap wooden door until there was nothing but torn-up paint and inch-deep fleshless lacerations. The sun is setting. The final flash of orange sky and her eyes will gloss over like Daddy's did when Mummy found him. Wet film slicked over green ovals of empty rage. She still looks like Mummy, only her mouth is a tight line that reaches from ear to ear and it can't open very well. It's all muffled words now. Mummy looks like a tree after the sun sets. Her arms and her legs grow longer. They get too heavy, so she hunches over. I am going to hide under her bed. Daddy's bulge is hidden under there. Mummy keeps it a secret, but I know. Her bed is thin and much too long, and her black hair is tangled up in the sheets. The scent of her sweat-stained cushion lingers into my nostrils and down to my lungs as I crawl under, deeper into the dark, stinking pit at the center. I see the warm shadows from the final seconds of sun dance through the handmade curtains at her window. Mummy took the skin off Daddy's body to make those. His belly button still attached to his torso skin. Looks like a little crystal in the golden light. The pretty shadows disappear, and the room is black. I can hear Mummy looking for me. She's laughing through that muffled slit on her face. There is death in her eyes, and a tremor in her shrieking that makes me nervous. She is angry now. I wasn't in the linen cupboard this time. I am too smart for her. I curl in on myself in the safety of the dark and wiggle my loose teeth in waiting. The nights are slow because I cannot sleep. I never sleep. Mummy is still running around the house looking for me. Grunts of anticipation much louder, much more feral than any wild animal. A pool of blood starts to swirl under my head where a loose tooth has fallen. Not good. Mummy smells blood as much as she craves it. The door creaks open. 2 long feet stand still in the doorway, toes curling from excitement at the scent of her baby's blood. I pray I do not end up as curtains and dolls like Daddy. Mummy is on the bed. She is digging up the insides of her mattress. Maybe if I stay still enough, she won't find me. I want to be brave like Daddy was. I roll onto my back. There's a big hole in the mattress above my head. My eyes take seconds to adjust to the darkness above before I see Mummy's dewy eyes beaming into mine. My baby is here. The tight line where her mouth has been stretched starts to open slightly, and she drools on me through her words. Her hand pokes through the slats in the bed and she pinches my cheeks until blood pours out. We need more dolls, baby. We need this skin. Warm water leaks from my eyes onto the tips of her fingers where blood gushes. She draws her hand away and I feel her tugging at my feet, grunting like an impatient child. I cannot kick, for her fingers reach from her palms to my thighs. I am paralyzed in her grip, and I let her pull me out from under my final hiding spot. I am dragged by my blood-stained hair to the backyard where Mummy likes to play. Mummy is thirsty, baby? You can't keep all that blood. You're not selfish. Her muffled words are comprehensible enough to foresee the fate at which I am now destined for. I am here to feed her, to fuel her life as she once did me. In the way shadows chase the light, how the moon must always put the sun to rest, birth must give way to death. In turn, I must give life, my flesh and bone, to the creator of my life and my light, to return to the darkness that will always encompass her. It is her right. Margaret loved being a librarian, but it could be awfully dreary at times. It was a slow Saturday afternoon at Green Meadows Library with hardly a patron in sight. Being in the center of a major city, she figured there were a plethora of places people would rather entertain themselves with than a library. She almost envied those who seemed to be too busy for everything. The only thing Margaret had going on in her life was flower garden and ever-growing collection of books. Most of her friends already had boyfriends, so her lack of a significant other only served to emphasize the mundanity of her life. She tried not to let it get to her. Her life was boring, but there wasn't any need to dwell on it. With a cup of hot chocolate in one hand and a book in the other, Margaret idly passed the time until she heard a loud thud from the library center. She got up from her desk to see what it was. Everyone else had already left, so she should have been the only one there. She walked down the hall and saw a large black book laying on the floor. The front and back were completely blank, and there was no ISBN number in sight. Intrigued, Margaret picked up the book and returned to the desk. She flipped open the first page to find handwritten notes. Today I met a goddess. She surrounds herself in a labyrinth of ancient tomes to feed her endless thirst of knowledge. More than any book, I want to know the contents of her heart. Now Margaret was really interested. It looked like someone had left behind their journal. She normally wasn't one to pry into others' business, but some wholesome voyeurism could potentially spice up her life. With each page, the writer went into more detail about their love for their crush. A beauty robed in a cloak of shadow. Her hair, a caramel river. Lips that speak of her vermilion passion. Could her perfection be any more grand? That passage made Margaret pause. The description of black clothes, brown hair, and red lipstick sounded a lot like her. Still, it was vague enough that it could apply to any woman, so she didn't give it too much thought. She took a sip of her chocolate and read on. I know the goddess will never grace me, so I can only admire her from afar. Sometimes she trades her black robes for floral ones, perhaps in homage of the garden she looks over. A duo of felines accompany her as she imbues her garden with seeds of her love. Margaret froze. The writer didn't just know her appearance, but also her gardening hobby and 2 pet cats. This wasn't something she could just pass off as coincidence. A morbid curiosity compelled her to read even more. Picnics in the park buying a new bike, a trip to a cafe while wearing a pink cardigan. Several of her routines were laid bare within the book with stark detail. The writer knew her favorites, foods, her local supermarket, the brand of soap she used, and even the exact time of her last bath. The last passage Margaret read was enough to make her blood turn to ice. Today I finally steeled the nerves to make the goddess notice me. I crafted a love elixir to win her heart. It will take the form of her favorite drink. With luck on my side, I added the elixir to her chocolate while she relieved herself in the bathroom. I can see her drinking from her lipstick-stained cup even now. Oh, Margaret, I cannot wait for you to be mine. A stabbing pain that gripped Margaret's heart sent her tumbling to the floor. Her thoughts became erratic and her field of vision diminished by the second. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was shadowy man towering over her, his Cheshire grin being the only discernible feature. Hello, my goddess. Are you ready to consummate our love? We thought a camping trip in northern Ontario's wilderness would be fun. The 6 of us, Tom, Liz, Sarah, Mike, Danny, and I, had been friends since high school. On the first night, we gathered around the campfire sharing ghost stories. Tom, ever the prankster, told us about the Wendigo, a malevolent spirit from Algonquin legend that turns humans into insatiable cannibals. We laughed it off, but the dense forest around us seemed to whisper warnings. The second night, strange calls began. They were distant at first, echoing through the trees, long, mournful howls that sent chills down my spine. Probably wolves, Mike said, but he sounded uneasy. We huddled closer to the fire, the shadows dancing menacingly on the trees. By the third night, the howls were closer. Tom and Danny decided to investigate despite our protests. They grabbed flashlights and headed into the darkness, leaving us by the fire. Hours passed. We called out for them, but the forest swallowed our voices. When they finally returned, something was off. Their eyes were wild, their clothes torn. We didn't see anything, Tom said shakily. Danny just nodded, staring into the fire as if he could see something we couldn't. We exchanged worried glances but said nothing. The fourth night, Liz went missing. She'd gone to collect firewood and never came back. Panic set in. We searched the forest, calling her name until our voices were hoarse. There was no trace of her. Tom and Danny grew more erratic. They whispered to each other in hushed tones, casting paranoid glances our way. It felt like they were hiding something, but fear kept us silent. On the 5th night, the howls turned into screams, agonizing human screams that echoed in our ears long after they faded. We were terrified, huddled together in the tent, clutching each other. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The next morning, Mike was gone. His sleeping bag lay empty, the zipper torn open as if he'd been dragged out. Tom and Danny insisted we move camp, but their eyes gleamed with something sinister. I realized then, too late, that they were no longer my friends. They were something else, something hungry. That night, Sarah and I stayed awake, listening to the howls. We planned to leave at first light, but they attacked before dawn. Tom and Danny, or whatever they'd become, came for us with an insatiable hunger in their eyes. We fought, but it was no use. I managed to escape, running blindly through the forest, the screams of my friends echoing behind me. I stumbled upon a ranger's cabin at dawn, exhausted and delirious. The rangers found me raving about the Wendigo. They never found my friends. Sometimes late at night, I hear those mournful calls, and I know they're still out there hunting. And I know one day they'll come for me too.